Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining me for my Try It Out Tuesday. Today I'm trying out this stamp set from Avery Elle. It's called Magnolia, and it has a beautiful two flowers actually on here. One large one and then one little magnolia bud. So I thought it'd be fun to create a nice little thank you card with this stamp set. Now I wanted to do something different than Copic coloring, so I thought we would do some embossing and coloring on vellum. The vellum that I like to use is from Hero Arts. It's the 48-pound vellum. It's on the thicker side. But I'm going to grab my flower, place that on there, and I'm going to place the stem too. I thought they would butt up against each other, but I'm going to have to stamp it in two separate parts. So we'll pick that flower up. I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool over the vellum. So important with vellum because the static will just pick up all the particles from the embossing powder. I'm going to ink up my image with my Versamark ink. We're going to go ahead and stamp that. And then I'll grab my stem, figure out where we're going to stamp that, pick it up, and then ink that with Versamark as well. So I have a nice pretty focal point for my card. I'm just going to go over my magnolia with some Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White embossing powder. Using my heat gun, I'm just going to go ahead and melt that. I chose to use white because I thought it'd be really bold and soft at the same time, if that makes any sense. But instead of using the front side of my magnolia, I'm going to use the reverse side. And to color it in, I'm going to use some Distress ink cubes. Now, I did grab my mini daubers here. I'm going to start off with picked raspberry, and starting from the center, I'm just going to add a little color, and then I wanted to bring in a little yellow around the center. So I added some mustard seed, and then to soften it towards the edges, I'm going around my flower with some spun sugar. Now I'm grabbing some bundled sage for the leaves, and those leaves on the bottom were a little bit smaller, so I'm using one of my detail blending tools. They work perfectly for the leaves. And then I added some Mowed Lawn right at the base of the leaves for a little bit of two-tone coloring. And then I wanted to add some colors to the folded part of my magnolia, but my blending tools were, even though they're small, they're too big. So these here that I'm using are blending stumps. Basically they're just rolled paper with a pointed tip. And so these work perfectly. They're made for coloring pencils. If you use Gamsol and want to blend with it, these work great. I actually picked these ones up from Walmart. They're over there by the watercoloring area in the craft section, but they work perfectly for blending distress inks on vellum. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of color to the folded parts of my leaves with my picked raspberry. And you can see I already, for my leaves, I went in with some Walnut Stain just to darken them at the base. And then I'm taking some tea dye distress ink and adding a little bit of darker shade, softening that bright picked raspberry. Now since magnolias are mostly white with a little bit of pink on them, I decided to take some distress ink. This is Picket Fence. And I'm going to soften the entire flower with my white distress ink. But I think that looks so gorgeous and so soft. But I just fussy cut it out. I did leave a little bit of a border around it. Now of course I like dimension. And so I thought I wanted a way to pop this flower up without showing the adhesive. So I grabbed a frame. This is a stitched rounded inside and outside frame from My Favorite Things. I just cut out a frame with that, and then I figured it'd be a great place to glue down my flower. Now for my card base, I'm using some Fog Cardstock. It's a real pretty gray. I already scored and folded it, and then I'm going to actually glue down my flower while it's on my card base. Now I'm not gluing down my frame, but I want to make sure I get my flower centered, so everything's still on my card base. I'm just using my multimedia mat to adhere my vellum to my frame there. And you can see I grabbed my sentiment already. The sentiment says heartfelt thanks. I'm just holding down the glue in my vellum with an acrylic block. And now we're going to stamp our sentiment. I'm going to stamp it directly on my card base. My card base is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch standard A2 size card base. Using my frame as a guide, I'll place my sentiment on my card base, and then I'll pick it up with the lid of my MISTI, and then I'm going to heat emboss this with white embossing powder. So using my anti-static powder tool, I went over my card base, and I'm going to ink up my sentiment with some Versamark ink. And I skipped this step, but I added some more white embossing powder, and I went ahead and melted that. Now, I wanted to pop this up like I said, so we're going to flip this over and add some foam tape behind the frame. And the center of the flower too, I added one little piece. I figured that would give it a little bit of stability. But I'm just taking my foam tape and cutting it into very small strips. And I found if you remove the release paper and then bend it around the corners, it works beautifully. Once that's all my foam tape's adhered, I'm going to remove the release paper and place that in the center of my card base. Now all we have to do is embellish it with a few little sequins. These are from Pretty Pink Posh. They're the 3mm sparkling clear sequins. And again, links for everything I used today will be below if you're interested, guys. But that's my card for today. Very quick and easy, but soft and elegant. I think it'd be a great thank you card for anybody. But thanks so much for joining me. I wish you a fantastic day, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.